Will Scola has engineered a tremendous cost-saving and strategic positioning advantage for Petco Corporation, and is here to tell the story this morning. Will?
Excellent.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. A little context. About a decade ago, I joined General Electric, and they had an e-sourcing program, and very unfamiliar with it at the time. But it was a tremendous competitive advantage. Throughout GE, we used it. We used it in aircraft engines, power systems, medical systems. Pretty dynamic tool. Went to the Home Depot. They used the same tool, different software platform, but the same concept, the same technology. Again, a tremendous competitive advantage. Got to Petco about 3 years ago. We did traditional sourcing, so paper-based sourcing. About a year and a half ago, we convinced our CFO to invest in an e-sourcing platform, brought it to the indirect, which is the not for resale products. So that could be construction, IT, any type of services. Realized double-digit savings on every category we touched, brought over $30 million of value in the first year and a half. And so now the executive mandate is everything we buy, whether it's for sale or for operations, is going to go through this e-sourcing platform. So tremendous tool, amazing competitive advantage. Primarily what I'm going to focus on is, I'm not sure the level of familiarity this room has with e-sourcing, so I'm going to start very basic, kind of conceptually what it is, work through what the different capabilities are. I'm going to get into practical application, some best practices. I've actually built an event, an e-auction, that's going to run live later this morning, so you get to watch how that works, and I'll give you some flavor to the tool that we chose to use, which is Ariba, and then we'll open it up at the end for some questions. So first off, we'll cover what is e-sourcing, kind of the 101. Second, we're going to get into, and traditionally you'll hear it from either suppliers or internal business partners, there's a whole lot of concerns or risks with e-sourcing. So we'll address those. I'll get into industry-wide, what are some of the tools that are out there, the commercially available e-sourcing platforms. We'll get into, so to take a further step back, we're all sourcing professionals. So we negotiate and buy professionally. E-sourcing is a tool in our chest. And so fundamentally, e-sourcing has to be part of your negotiation strategy, and you have to rationalize, you have to first develop your strategy to make sure that e-sourcing fits. So I would just want to kind of cover that real quick to make sure we're applying it appropriately, but then bring in some best practices around, when to use it, and then also how to continue to get buy-in in the business. We're going to go online and view a live demonstration of this tool. Recap on some just kind of negotiation fundamentals with an e-sourcing focus, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So, and if I'm not sure the normal format, but if there's any questions or whatever, just feel free to interrupt, and I'll be happy to answer. So to take a kind of a macro view, there's e-sourcing is basically electronic sourcing. So it's the industry analysis, baselining your process, prospecting, RFPing, and then the most critical component or the most value-add component is the actual negotiation or the e-auction. So when you hear of e-sourcing, there's an entire suite of activities that you can do online that you also could traditionally do via paper, but the one true competitive advantage is what they would call an auction. And there's primarily three types of auction. There's a reverse auction, and that's where it's like eBay, but in reverse. So every time somebody bids, the starting price is $10, and they want to sell it to you for $9.99, and the next person offers it at $9.80, and they bid against each other. So at the end of the event, you have true market pricing. And the big thing here is you don't always get price reductions, but you always identify the bottom of the market. So it's good it's just a good identifier of where the price point could be. There's a Dutch auction, and that's actually the opposite. That's where if there's a large gap in bids, you may not feel that suppliers B and C can catch supplier A, so you'll actually start the price point below, and at a certain decrement, the price point climbs up. And your hope in the concept there is once somebody grabs that bid, the auction ends, and the hope is that low bidder will actually bid against themselves without realizing it. So that's and then there's there's the third where it's the reverse auction, but all data is completely transparent. You let the supplier see what their rank is, what their price is, and what everybody else at rank and price is. And depending upon the event, you'd choose one of the three strategies. So outside of that, outside of the very competitive or very strategic e-auction capability, e-sourcing also there's a workflow management. So every company generally has a strategic sourcing process. You can load your strategic sourcing process into the tool, and from a standardization and from a workflow standpoint, you can bring on new team members and via this tool they're coached on how to follow the sourcing process. There's also a record, so a repository of all of this data. It's a streamlined communication process. So as you load suppliers in and you load all the data in, questions and answers all come through this tool. So if suppliers have a question about one of the specifications, you can choose to respond to one supplier, or you can push that same response out to all suppliers. So it creates transparency for the supply base, transparency internally. While suppliers may not like it, at the end of the process, they generally agree that it was very fair. And also for the non-incumbents, they're very excited because it creates opportunity that generally wouldn't have been there. It's a lot easier to target negotiate with a preferred supplier than to go through this rounds and rounds of negotiation. So I'm going to focus on at least in the beginning, I'm going to focus on the e-auction component, that very, very competitive differentiator. And so the first bullet is exactly that. You put suppliers into an event, they have X minutes, and it could be 10 or 15 or 20, where they literally, this is their only chance to submit pricing information. And over the course of 10, 15, 20 minutes, you're going to collect 30, 50, 100 independent bids. So think about how long it would take for you to get on the phone and to actually churn out that many proposals and counter proposals, the amount of time and resources. And then, frankly, would the supplier, after the 5th time calling them, or the 15th time, would they respond back? But when they realize that this is their only chance to submit price, and they're in 2nd place or in 3rd place, that electronic data, that immediate feedback generates that competitive pressure. Another huge caveat to this tool is that winning the auction, except in the Dutch, winning the auction does not mean you won the business. This is simply information that we gather for the business, and at the end of the day, we consider service levels, quality, history, all the different components. But because this is a price-focused event, the suppliers are very, very competitive, very attuned to that price component. The second thing is process transparency. So if and when you implement an e-sourcing program, generally the business, your internal business partners, feel that there's a loss of control, or they don't trust the tool. And they may feel like they've lost control because they enjoyed negotiating with their preferred supplier or the incumbent, or however they used to do it. In this process, you need at least 2, preferably 3 or more suppliers. The information is communicated consistently throughout the supply base, so everybody internally knows exactly what's being communicated, and all of the suppliers get the exact same information. So after you run this type of e-sourcing event a couple times, the business becomes very comfortable with the process, with the flow of information, with the integrity of the data, and the suppliers do too, because each one of them was treated the exact same way. And then lastly, and businesses, do you have a question?
Well, my question was, how much time did the suppliers have to prepare for the auction? Did you send out RFPs electronically to everybody at the same time?
Yeah.
So they all have 2 weeks to
Yeah, that's a great question. And think of it very similar to your traditional sourcing process. So if you require samples or you require pre-qualification, all of that due diligence still needs to occur before the auction. It's like anything, this takes a little longer upfront, or could potentially, because the output is completely actionable. You have the best pricing, and if you've identified truly qualified suppliers up front, you know their products work, you know their service levels, you know their capacity, you can award on the spot. If you haven't done that due diligence, if you wanted to test the market, that's fine. Just realize that you have to complete, like any other sourcing process, you have to complete that due diligence to ensure you have a good supplier. So it depends on the project, it depends on the level of complexity, it depends on if all the suppliers have already provided that product or if they're pre-qualified. So yeah, kind of ambiguous, but depending upon the situation. You hear, business, lives or dies by the speed that they move at. This gives tremendous speed. So on so many levels. On communication, you've streamlined that process. On the bidding, you've taken weeks of negotiation down to minutes. And now think about this. This is a repository of your data. So all of your suppliers are in there, all of your specifications, all of the information you need to relaunch to market. In 12 months, in 24 months, when it's time to rebid this, you go in there and tweak, you make minor modifications to the items if you wanted to add suppliers or delete suppliers, or if there's a spec change, but in almost no time, this event is ready to launch. So tremendous speed advantage. This is a snapshot of what the tool looks like, and we're actually going to go in so you'll see it live. But effectively, what happens is in the reverse auction module, the suppliers, you get to choose what characteristics they see. So do they see just their rank? Do they see, do they not see anything? Do they see the low bid price? And so you can actually customize, and I'll show you in a minute, what characteristics you allow the suppliers to see in the program. But again, there's some great things here. In a global environment, if you want to bid out something to domestic and international and see which one is most competitive, in most of the tools, there's the capability to burden or weight. So if somebody's FOB Shanghai and somebody's DDP LA, you can have your logistics team add in the delta for the freight and their bid, and they actually marry in, so they're competing at apples to apples. You can put a waiter in for transition costs. So, and then also it works in multiple languages and multiple currencies. So again, if that's something that's concerning to you, most tools have that capability. And then from a communication standpoint, whereas Shanghai writes you at 2 in the morning and you respond to them at 2 in the afternoon, which means they get it the next day, all responses and questions happen through the tool. So as questions and responses come in, you're sending them in and pushing them out. So everybody's getting data at the same time, and there's not that. There may be the time zone lag, but there's not the information sharing lag. Everybody's getting it at the same time. And then again, this is an amazing repository for all this data. So again, when it's time to resource, or let's say your supplier fails you at some point, you can easily go back into the tool and see who was number 2 and help complete your supply chain. So I'm not sure, most of you have probably heard of the Aberdeen Group, but they did a study and they tried to quantify why should you e-source, besides just the competitive advantages of the competitive cost structure and speed to market and process integrity, process transparency. And they agreed. They said that this primarily drives down material costs, sourcing cycle times, and then internal administrative costs, because again, the tool does a lot of the work for you. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is there's a lot of resistance, again, in the supply base, and you may find it internally to why should you e-source, or I'm concerned with e-sourcing. One of the biggest things is this isn't a decision-making tool. Whoever made the decision historically, so if it's the buyer or the merchant or whatever your business calls that person, they still make the final decision. All we're doing is gathering more information for them. So we're giving them additional data points. We're going to get cheap products. Why would we go through this? If you wring things out to the lowest common denominator, you're going to get a cheap product. If that's your sourcing process, if all you're cared about is cost, you're probably going to get the least expensive product. These tools have the capability to have weighting tools. So again, your sourcing process has to be comprehensive. If service levels or quality or lead times, whatever is important to you, you need to put in there and add a weighting, and the tool will actually will compile the best total value supplier for you. And then we don't necessarily want to award to the lowest price guy, the cheapest guy. We run events sometimes just to test the market. Oh, not sure what I did there. And the thought is there we go. The thought is that sometimes market conditions are favorable, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we don't know. The resin industry is climbing, but we haven't seen a price increase yet, and we want to resource our plastic pails. we may run an event to test the market and see if it's the right time to actually go through a rigorous sourcing event. Yeah.
You had success in this market with item sourcing or a whole category of items, or is it only single item sourcing?
Yeah.
Or construction projects?
Yeah, good question. So you can, depending upon the tool, they have lots, and you're getting into lotting strategy. And so a thought would be, do you want to award, would you prefer to award this package, this bundle to a single supplier? And as a single supplier capable of quoting on all these items? In most of these tools, you can say lot one, 5 suppliers can bid on, or these 5. Lot 2, only 4 of them, because one may not have the capability. So you can create a comprehensive event for efficiency and speed and to attract more attention because of the aggregate dollars. And then depending upon your lotting strategy, only allow certain players to bid on certain components. But yeah, there's the flexibility in that. Project by project, it depends on what your strategy is, what your risk appetite is, what your, if you're comfortable sole sourcing a macro category to a single supplier. And that's another thing is that generally in the lotting strategies, you may take a large category and break it into macro lot or micro lots, with the thought being that we don't want 100% of our supply with one provider. We may go 80-20 or even 90-10, but we want that redundancy. But at the end of the day, we sit long and hard and we say, it's very hard to imagine a scenario where running a sourcing event through an auction is a bad idea. All you did was collect more information. It forced the business to be more rigorous in specifying what we wanted. It gives us additional data points, and I'm not sure what I'm hitting. And at the end of it, we don't have to action against it. It could simply be for information. So, okay. So that's kind of my thoughts on the risks of e-sourcing. Out in the industry, there's kind of three spectrums of providers out there. We play right now with Ariba and InnerSource. The tool providers, so the tool is basically that e-sourcing platform where you can do the contract management, the workflow management, and the auction event. The challenge there is, the benefits is usually it's lower cost. You have complete flexibility because it's either out in the cloud or it's on your server. The challenge is you either need to staff up and hire people with the competency to run this tool, or you need to kind of disperse that workload across your team, and everybody needs to be a pseudo tool expert. So a little more cumbersome. It may require additional headcount, but it's generally the low cost option. Full service, the InnerSource, the hedgehogs, these guys, you could almost look at them as staff augmentation. A lot of times what they do is they will do the industry analysis for you. So you say, you know what, I want to look at structural steel. They'll figure out what the market trends are. They'll find domestic or international suppliers for who could potentially participate. They can even help you define specifications. If you said, you know what, I bought shopping carts, I'm not really sure what they were, they were metal shopping carts. And they can come back with a bunch of specification recommendations, and your internal team can help select them. So the full service ones offer a lot more of the sourcing capability. Yes, sir. Yeah, so 2 ways. With Ariba, they call it the ASN, the Ariba Supplier Network, and they've got tens of thousands of suppliers globally that have participated in events, and they have some sort of a ranking or evaluation as to how they performed or quality levels, or specifically if there's an issue. If somebody had an issue with them, they still may be in the tool, but they'll be identified. I always go to the business, whoever that category owner is, and I want them to definitely include their preferred suppliers, and then I'll go out and do my own industry analysis. But again, depending on the full service ones, if you have no category depth, they'll go out and they'll find a pool of suppliers, and they'll do it through the there's different category codes. There's one domestic, one international. That's the easiest way they do it. They find a common supplier, one in that category, and then based off of that category number, they blast out and they find the whole spectrum. So again, depending upon what level of service you want, you can get a full service for quite a bit more. You can get a tool provider for thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, and then with Ariba, they actually have a pretty capable tool, and they've outsourced their service arm to Accenture. And so we have 2 companies kind of supporting our initiative. Okay, so we're going to take a step back to just general purchasing. And this is, if we said this is kind of the spectrum of negotiation, does anybody have an idea as to where auctions, the competitive auction, would play, or more specifically, where you wouldn't want to play? So as you work across the first 2 or 3 quadrants, that's kind of the sweet spot. When there is no brand loyalty or supplier loyalty, or it's a one-time buy, I strongly suggest go in there and compete price. Once you start getting in the end of the 3rd and 4th quadrants, once your partners are strategic and you guys are growing or failing together, that's probably not a good time. That's probably not a good environment to introduce e-sourcing, because you're challenging the fundamentals of that partnership, of that relationship. So just keep that in mind. Great tool, definitely creates that competitive advantage, but when appropriate. So internally, you would say, okay, I've got a company, a company full of buy. Where should I apply this? Some good categories are the not for resale. Those are pretty commoditized. Office supplies, equipment, services. Now services get tricky because again, you get what you pay for, and the business has to clearly understand what they want. They may have requirements, but at the end of the day, they're getting 3 other services that they didn't document that they really require, and so services, as a general warning, become a lot more complicated. On the retail side, anything that's private label or not branded. So, for instance, Iams Food, probably not a good e-sourcing category because there's only one Iams. Petco dog beds, where we have specifications for what an orthopedic or donut bed looks like, and we go out to the marketplace and we have different factories in China and wherever compete them. That's a very good category because we own the specification. We don't really care who's making it. We care about quality and cost and fulfillment and fill rates and things like that. If anything that's proprietary or patented or branded, obviously not a good category. Things that have high levels of competition, and competition can be as little as 2, but 3 or more is kind of that sweet spot where you get into the true competitive environment. And then also the favorable market conditions. Do your due diligence, make sure you're not going into a headwind, or you may not want to resource a category if the supplier is not challenging you, if the underlying commodity is going up. So just some general thoughts. And then internally, when you look at, how do I get a business? Again, these people who've bought for a decade, 20 years, how do I get them on board with electronic sourcing? First off is anytime you can get an executive sponsor, and not even a mandate, but somebody high up who's interested in it, generally that's a tremendous lever. Pilot, go in there with the idea that, hey, this is just a pilot, this is just a phase 1. Try an event, try a favorable event with a positive commodity trend, with multiple suppliers, with no brand loyalty, because the success is ultimately going to fall back on that business owner. And that momentum and that confidence is going to get contagious. The rest of the business is going to begin to fall into line. But once you have a little bit of traction, you've got to sit down with the business. You have to help identify a pipeline of projects. You have to actually develop a project plan and set goals with them. You need to get out and, similar to what this would be, you need to educate the business as to what e-sourcing is, what the benefits are, what the risks are, and how the process is going to work. If you haven't done your due diligence up front, if you don't have complete data, the event may occur and it may look successful, but at the end of the day, the business is going to be dissatisfied because the results may not satisfy the company's needs. So while it may feel a little cumbersome, and the business may actually feel like it's working slower, the following correct process is the way to go, and collecting appropriate specifications and specifying everything and asking for exactly what you need is ultimately the right way to go, and getting them behind that is critical. And then once the event occurs, which it's actually starting right now, you want to encourage them to come, and you want to encourage their senior leaders to come. There's something visceral about watching the price literally tick down in front of your eyes and realizing that's tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of margin that you've just created. So, and again, that's kind of that carnival atmosphere and energy and momentum. And then lastly, track it, whether it's at a company level or a functional level or a departmental level, if people have a goal and they have a roadmap to where they should be, you should be making it very visible who's on track, who's ahead of plan, and who's not. Again, kind of that peer pressure, visibility, and if there is an executive sponsor, they can help with the ones that are both ahead of plan and behind plan. So if there's I've covered a lot of concepts, a lot of stuff. If there's no, I would say ask questions. I'm going to pull this up, and if there's any thoughts or, let's see. Okay, so this is our tool, Ariba. This is kind of the macro page, the introduction as to what the event is. The supplier sees something completely different. This is our view as kind of the owner or creator. So just to give you a little bit of context, this lot 6-1 was set at 10 minutes. So we are about a minute into the first lot. Again, it lets you choose what type of event, what your language is, and you could have multiple. I created a 2-lot event here. You can create them where they're both open at the same time, where one opens, where they're both open at the same time and both close at the same time. You can create them where they both open at the same time, and the second one's clock to close doesn't start until the first one closes. So for instance, the first one's a 10-minute lot. The second one's also open for that first 10 minutes, but at 10 minutes and 1 second, the first one closes and the second one has 10 more minutes. Or serial, which is lot 1 opens, and then once it closes, lot 2 opens. I've created the environment, and this is actually, again, it's all part of bid strategy. I said if somebody bids within the last 3 minutes, it triggers an overtime. And what happens generally is there'll be slow activity up front. And then in the last minute or two, somebody will try to steal the business. But with this overtime capability, the clock resets, everybody sees it resets. And the person who is number 1 that just got leapfrogged will generally try to leapfrog again. And you'll see this frantic tail at the very end of the auction where most of the cost savings occurs. And these are all, the reason I'm showing you this, these are all just kind of bid parameters that you get to choose as the auction creator. Yes?
Here's what's happening on the other end of this. Are they, must they have someone there monitoring during this specific 10-minute window, or can they set it up beforehand? Or like... Yeah,
well, let me go back to one more thing. So the one last thing is, right here, do you allow pre-bids? And so what that means is can you log in before the event and submit a bid? I always allow pre-bids. Generally, some suppliers their pencil's very sharp, they know exactly what they're doing, or they're just being difficult, and they go in and they put a very aggressive pre-bid in, and then they don't log in during the event. So they say, this is my best and final. Generally, I love that, because what happens is everybody who is participating chases them down and usually passes them. And the people who put a pre-bid in very aggressively and sit and watch will generally get chased down, surpassed, and then they'll start bidding again. So yeah, there's both flexibilities. Yeah.
How do you consider pre-qualified? You're getting excited, you're bidding. Do you ever have someone bid and say, oh, sorry, can't commit to that pricing?
During the event or after?
At the end of the day, you're trying to get the best price.
Yeah.
And sometimes are these folks qualified? Are their bids firm?
Yeah.
Is there a chance they could overbid themselves and then have to back off?
Yeah. So I'll show you. There's actually 2 things they have to physically check: the pre-bidder agreement and our T's and C's before they're even allowed to place a bid. And so there is a contractual element to that. They've committed. During the event, let's say there was a mistake. There's a support team that they can call into real time, and the support team can pull that bid. Because it could happen, you could drop a 0 or something. But at the end of the event, if there was that retraction, there's 1, we didn't do our due diligence vetting. 2, we have some contractual recourse. But at the end of the day, you'd probably go to the second in line and just enjoy the fact that person created an even more competitive environment. But you definitely wouldn't award to them. Yeah.
Are some of your contractual deal breaker clauses part of your pre-qualification agreements before you even?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll actually show you them. I'll go into the context as to what we would send out. And generally, just as kind of best practices for sourcing, we take the most contentious components of our contract, continuous improvement, service level where there's penalties if they don't meet certain service levels, termination clauses, payment terms, the things that are most negotiated. And once they get into pre-bid, we'll usually send that out to them saying, you either accept this in its entirety, or if you don't, let us know why what sections you don't, and you may be disqualified from the event. And what we try to do is make that salesperson now become our advocate, because they're still trying to get the deal. They'll go back to their legal and fight on our behalf. So we kind of use that power curve in our favor. Yeah.
Do you know how many of your suppliers have come up with an e-negotiating piece of software so you don't have a human on the other end of this actually bidding?
I don't know. It'd be neat if it was possible. I don't even know if it is.
That's how the majority of massive eBay auctions occur, right? There's no human on the other end anymore. You just set it all up beforehand, and it's just in the last 12 seconds, it just bids it.
Yeah, a smart software developer would do that. I haven't seen it yet, but okay. So, but even if that's the case, great, because they put in their market bottom. So this is the actual event. So there's 3.5 minutes left. So just to kind of walk through, you see the different suppliers are color coded. This is the best price, the one with the star, and they're actually ordered in the rank of bidding. So what you can see is we actually put in a historical price. This is what we were paying before. We said, you know what? Right out of the gates, we want to ensure that this delivers some value to Petco. So we put in a ceiling saying you can't bid above this point. And so some of the suppliers came in at pre-bid time with some competitive bidding. Again, here in the last couple moments, you can see kind of this, and this is generally what will happen. This kind of aggressive bidding at the end where people are chasing it. This step right here is huge. Normally, it's tightly grouped. People are bidding and you can set the decrement. I think I set it at a dime. The minimum decrement is 10 cents. But this is generally kind of how you'll see an event flowing. I'll get into, and we'll actually watch it a second. We'll see if there's any more activity.
So we're bidding on a cat toy here? Is that
Cat furniture. Yeah. This is, and the funny thing is, this is literally an auction we're running. The numbers are different for confidentiality, but we're actually running cat furniture and cat post bid with major. This is a $4 million auction that we're going to run the 16th of June, and so. So this is literally how we do business. And we have 3 domestic suppliers, 2 international. We have them burdened to where the domestics are FOB into our facilities. The international are FOB into Shanghai because we have great freight forwarders. And we figured out the logistics from Shanghai into our DCs, and we put that weighting in. And at the end of the day, this event is actually going to happen. So we'll see if they. Yeah. So I'll click over just in 1 minute. I'll show you all of the kind of the context that you can put in here. I was just hoping if somebody places a bid, you can actually see real time. This is what I would have kind of in the boardroom up on the screen with the merchant there, and kind of this energy with their VP and the chief merchandising officer, and they're all watching us and they're saying, okay, we are literally. We are literally saving, hundreds of thousands of dollars right at this moment, and it kind of creates that momentum and that carnival atmosphere. Yeah, so somebody, again, just rebid. Yeah.
It looks like Wild Horse is dropping the price as we go.
Yes, yep.
The most recent bid still didn't beat the best supplier, which is getting closer.
Yeah, they're chasing it, yeah. And that is very typical because they don't know, they just know their rank. So they see right now that they're in second place, so they're making stair steps trying to find out.
Can Wild Horse see what best supplier's price is at this point?
That is up to you as your sourcing strategy. Exactly. With this, I didn't. I just let them see what their rank is. And
Wild Horse knows that they're number 2.
Yeah.
And they've got to guess how aggressive they need to be to beat number 1.
Yep, so they're making, and the minimum bid decrement is 10 cents, so you can see they're actually stepping down at the minimum, trying to catch it.
But they also may say, hey, look, we've been in business with Petco for the last 12 years, Wild Horse, or
No.
Best Supplier is just some.
What happened, okay, so we have a merchandise team that picks, they're like our fashion designers. They pick assortment, color, this quantities. When it comes to deal time, all communication stops. I'm talking from the beginning of this process. All communication about the sourcing event stops with the merchant, and it all comes through me. And it creates this environment to where I am agnostic. We obviously value your history and this and that, and that's part of our decision matrix. But you are not dealing with your friend anymore. You're dealing with procurement, and truly, there are no paper bids or secondary bids after this event. We make it very clear. This is your only opportunity to submit price.
You've got Wild Horse's attention.
Yeah, they're chasing. Let's see how much time is left.
Green Square next to Wild Horse, what's that mean?
That was just the most recent.
Most recent, yeah.
Yeah. And I think what it is because we're through wireless, it's refreshing, kind of slow. But yeah, they took it.
By the way,
Yeah.
by the way, Will, is this how it sounds at Petco? When your merchants are watching this transaction go on, are people cheering for it?
I've had it to where the chief merchandising officer will grab the CEO, and then he'll grab the CFO, and they'll all be. It creates such an environment, and this is literally the energy it creates. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Is there anything that keeps Wild Horse from just making 100 cents in bids, or is it just psychological? He's getting frustrated at this point. So now he's made higher and higher bids.
Yeah. Well, the minimum. So you set the minimum decrement. So if he wanted to bid $1 less, he could do it. You can't go up from your previous bid, but the minimum you could step down is 10 cents. So he's taking his 10 cent steps, if I see that correctly. Yeah, because he was just trying to chase it.
How long have you been using this tool?
At Petco, about 18 months.
How much have you saved in that 18 months?
We've done a little over 30 million of true savings where it was unit cost reduction on the indirect side, and we've saved a couple million so far on the merchandise. And the great thing with the merchandise is to the CFO, to the chief merchandising officer, we can take that to margin or we can take that to market share. If we want to drop our price, we gain market share. If we want to take that to margin, we get more profit.
Everybody get that point, because that's important. We're not all merchants. Okay.
Yeah, because we can make the money as margin and reduce our costs, keep the price the same, or we can reduce our for sale costs and say, you know what, we have 30% penetration, let's get up to 50. Let's take this savings directly to the cost. We'll keep our margins the same, but we're going to become the market leader in this category. And it gives the business flexibility as to how they want to use those dollars or deploy those dollars.
What do you think's going through Best Supplier's mind right now? There's 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Off by 10 cents.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. They don't know how far they're off. They just know they're in second place now. Yeah. And so literally what happens is generally it's like the owner of the company and their finance guy, and they're sitting in a room and they think they know what number they're going to fall at. Yeah.
Oh, Secretariat.
And you'll see what happened is it reset the clock too.
I'm sorry?
It reset the event clock.
So did that just extend the duration of it?
Exactly. And that's what you want. If somebody places a bid in the last X minutes, you set it 1, 2, 3, it resets the clock so everybody has time to regroup, figure out what's going on. So the psychology somewhat, the psychology of I'm going to get my last bid in somewhat works against them in the fact that it created a moment for everybody else.
Does it keep resetting?
It can indefinitely. And while it could get tedious, every time it resets means you're getting a better price. It's somewhat, it's very entertaining, and it's definitely, nobody leaves the room. Yeah.
So if you look at the graph over there, we can see the psychology in this.
Exactly.
It's dropping like a rock.
Exactly.
So a little brinksmanship.
Yep.
Is this a fake auction or is it a real one?
It is it's Demonstrative auction, it's real. This is actually one we're going to run. This is just not the real event. There's just, yeah, it's a simulation. But this is literally an event we are going to run in a week. Yeah.
It's my turn to ask.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and not talked about doing it, but talked about kind of the psychology or the ethics around it. So we've decided we've made a professional position that if they're not qualified, if it's somebody we wouldn't award the business to, we won't include them, and we would never include somebody that isn't a real bidder like ourselves. And the thought is one that's yeah, and God forbid if it ever got out that we did that, we would lose all credibility. So there's so little upside and so much downside to that.
Do you in turn participate in sourcing with someone you're trying to sell to? And do you have product that you might?
We sell at GE was different. At Petco we sell to consumers, and so we luckily.
But you never sell to another company or another brand.
Not yet.
So you buy in bulk and.
Yeah. And God willing, we don't have to do that because it is a very effective tool. I wouldn't want to have to go against it. But yeah.
So I understand that when the bidding is over and you've got your best price, you will then only do negotiations with that best price, or is that a decision you make whether you're going to take a pot with the 2 or 3 best prices and see then where you can get additional quality or service or whatever?
Yeah, and that comes down to your strategy. So you can do any of the above. And what I'll do is, so you've got a flavor for how the event works. I'm going to go into the details of the event to see. Yes, sir. Oh, was there one more?
So my question is, how about like ethical questions or anything like that? Like, what's the
Yeah, I'll show you. There's actually a message board. Well, there's 2 things. One, you can actually ping a supplier and say, you're not bidding, you're about to lose the business. And 2, if there's any type of technical error, there's an 800 number that they can call into, and that number will immediately correct their error, reverse their bid, or place let's say their technology went down, they could place a surrogate bid on their behalf. So, that all, but yeah, we could literally ping a supplier right now and tell them to motivate.
Can you then hook this into, say, an online store so that you get the lowest bid, which then immediately publishes like your markup on it on your website, which I can then buy at a great cost, and then you have the supplier drop ship it to the customer, so you guys are basically just a website in the middle?
It's a great idea. We don't do that, but
I can help you.
yeah, that's a great idea. So this is, and I thinned out a lot of things that were either proprietary, confidential, or just that wouldn't make sense for here. But let's go into. So what this is and it comes through to them as a little cleaner, but you put in all these subcategories. So when they first log in, they see all this context, and they read through it, and at some point, here we go. Questions, answers, response format, and delivery instructions, terms of contract. And see right here, they actually have to agree to some of these terms and conditions to participate in the event. And so things like this, the rights to terminate, and again, they have to pre-agree before they're allowed to place bids. But you can put all of this without exploding each and every category. And I can open up a couple of them. We somewhat get the kind of that legal. We get the agreement, the physical agreement that they agree to our pay terms, they agree to our termination rights, the things that are very contentious. We can insert right here. These are literally our specifications. You can load in and save them so they're all in, again, one central repository. Easy for the supplier to access. All they need is an internet connection. standard format, and then once this event is closed after the 16th, this will sit in a, on the e-shelf until we're ready to source it again. The merchant will check the specifications, see if anything's changed, see if we want to change suppliers, and this event will launch in almost no time. Did you have a question? No. Yeah.
How much time does it take to educate the vendors on this product?
It's very simple. So, you know what I should have done? I should have created a dummy supplier so we could log in and I could show you what happens. You get an email from the tool saying you've been invited to an event. You open it up. There's all these T's and C's right there in front of you, and it says you need to accept kind of the agreement terms. There's a radio box you click on, and then you go into the event. You do the same thing again. It's actually redundant, and then you go down and it has all the specifications and price, and there's two boxes at the bottom saying what would you like to put in as your pre-bid, and it's very clear as to what the starting bid is and what the decrement is. So without almost any education, you're ready to roll. And what we generally do is run a test event, exactly what we're doing here, 2 or 3 days before the actual event. One, so everybody ensures they have connectivity, so they ensure exactly how it's going to work. And we do it very close to the event because we know people get distracted or memories fade. So we want the mechanics of this process fresh in their head. So come event time, there's no technical reasons why this won't be successful. It's just a matter of, did you do the due diligence around specifications? Are the market conditions favorable? Did you invite enough suppliers and the right suppliers? Yes, sir.
If I'm a supplier and I'm interfacing with you as Petco, is the interface the same with all the people that use Ariba?
Ariba specifically is customizable. Each platform, and I think Ariba is great. I'm not endorsing one platform over the other, but Ariba is good in the fact that if you buy a license, they'll customize it to your liking. Yeah. So we'll go back. So effectively, this is, and where's the? Yeah, I covered all that. Just all the detailed specifications, everything that they need. And also we spelled out on here sample requirements, what samples they need to send us, when they need to send us the samples by to be considered eligible for the event.
So the real investment is upfront in this process, it seems.
Yeah, the data collection, the education, the supplier vetting, the supplier communication. But once it's done, these prices would be generally, these first dots would be generally what you'd get from them on paper. And then you would call them up or do some sort of a negotiation, and you may get a stair step, but I without counting, there's a screen we can look at. So this is savings. Looking to see if we can see all the number of bids.
This auction just saved Petco $45,000 in that.
Yeah, if it was, and actually the real event's going to, it'll probably save us $400,000 or $500,000. I mean, at the end of the day, when we actually run it, there's I think 12 lots in total that we're going to do. So if there aren't any questions on the tool, I'm just going to go back to the presentation, and so again, we're sourcing professionals. So I'd be remiss to not kind of tie this back to our trade. Ultimately, whether it's e-sourcing or not, own the negotiation. The beauty with this tool is you've created the playground. They either are in the sandbox in the e-tool or they're not. And again, if there's environments, certain trades like attorneys, we have a lot of trouble participating in this for generic legal fees and other trades, any structure, anytime you're put into with artificial pressures or things that aren't comfortable, change the rules. And a great example of this is us putting our suppliers in this tool. If they had a better game in town, they wouldn't play because we've created an entire disadvantageous environment for them, but tremendously advantageous for Petco. Make sure, again, when you're doing deals, everything's conditional. At the end of this, we clearly specify in the T's and C's that low bid does not win business, but if you're not low bid, you're almost definitely not going to get the business. So, make sure you don't give away more than you have to. And then, anything with the right conditions. So maybe it's the third best supplier, but if they agree to the condition that payment terms are net 365, so you pay them in a year, maybe the economics works out. So be creative when you're looking at total value and at the different proposals people offer. And this is, while huge in sourcing, I think it's tremendously huge in the e-sourcing. The time you put in upfront pays off at the end of the day. You actually have suppliers that are viable, where what they've committed to is literally the service you need. And the speed of the process goes tremendous at the end because of the work you put up front. So while there are no rules, I say you should own the rules if you're on the buying side. So any questions? I put a couple more slides in about the tool, but we covered all that already. Yeah.
You've done this enough that you have probably a mean for your cost to run a test. And obviously you're skilled at it. So
It's free.
Getting started.
Yeah. To run a test, like to test this in a business. So each of the providers.
You're not going to be profitable in your use of it as a test piece, are you?
Say that one more time.
I mean, every time you run, say, a test option,
Yeah.
but roughly what is it run?
Free.
I mean, what are your administrative costs?
Yeah, okay, good question. So we go with the middle one, Ariba. So InnerSource has a per drink service where every time they run an event, it's the full service. It's tremendous amounts of due diligence and auction capability, but they charge you X thousands, and I can't get into the exact cost, but they charge you X thousands per event. Ariba has a similar where they'll bundle a bunch of events, and they'll do either full or I think they only do the full bundled, and it's X amount per event. What we did is we bought a license. So it's like a Microsoft license. I can log in once or 100 times a day. And so running this event, I set it up myself. I've done it enough to where it's very intuitive. And so, but for complex ones or we have a lot of activity, we also have the full service from Ariba where they'll come in and help build the events. So yeah, this actual event was just some time for me. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm in business, and I'm considering setting this up. Is part of the upfront cost the way that you market for vendors? Because what if I go and hold an event and nobody shows up for this?
Yeah. Well, so really, it comes down to the category, the scale of what you're competing.
Is that part? That's not part of the software we're talking about, or the license. Inviting vendors to participate. Yeah, 3 vendors didn't.
Yeah. Yep.
How did they know to come and bid on your event?
Yeah, good question. So one, the suppliers that you know of, and then 2, the suppliers that you know of, suppliers that you can find, and then 3rd, depending upon your tool provider, they'll bring a suite.
Well, I have to invite them in order to hold it.
Exactly. And let's say with Ariba, they have that Ariba supplier network. If you throw your event out to the Ariba supplier network, you'll get 20, 200, 2,000 suppliers that may want to participate, and then you can vet them at that point. Yeah. But generally, let's say you were running an event, you would, if your software provider didn't have a database of suppliers, you would go out and do kind of that sourcing due diligence. Yes, sir.
As a business owner interested in exploring e-sourcing with a business implementing, where would you start?
Yeah, so I would probably, if it were me, I'd probably go to one of the full service ones, just because you can see the true power of it because there's a whole lot of growing pains and there's a learning curve to knowing the software. If you went to a InnerSource I don't want to endorse one versus the other, but they'll do a event and they have a pretty capable back office. You could reach out to them and they will help you all the way through supplier discovery to spec generation to all the administrative stuff, and then they'll actually run the event for you.
So as a business owner, would I go to Google, say e-sourcing, and come up with?
Yeah, I mean there's a couple other players, but these are the big ones. Yes, sir.
I would actually check out Gartner, Forrester, ISM, and there's quite different. Let's start with Gartner and Forrester to get an idea of the marketplace for business commerce.
Yeah.
And they do a pretty great job of covering this sector in particular. And also it depends on your maturity process of your sourcing organization to determine which route you're going to choose. So if you're just now starting out in sourcing, strategic sourcing, probably gonna look at the full service side, much like we recommended. But you guys have a very mature process and very rigorous. Then you want to start looking at, either the Rebus or your Inspores, Cycles, proposition, whatever. So,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
When Petco meets its goals, what does this do to relationship with suppliers? They feel better. I mean, we saw
Yeah.
how we felt on the buy side of the road.
Yeah.
How do they feel on the other side?
Yeah, we actually will poll them, and while nobody likes losing, the feedback we get is generally it is a very fair, transparent process, and at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with that. I can't,
Best I can do.
and it was fair, and it was. These are people we'll invite back, and they understand our process, and when they do come back, they'll understand a little clearer. And in general, we'll get feedback as to why we didn't select them. So, yeah.
Some of the logistic or administrative costs and upfront things, I mean, that you're talking about, I think you said up front, it sounds like whether you're new business or just getting started or whatever, what's really key is setting that strategy, right, of how you want to approach it.
Mhm.
So, is that part of the full service, not just the details of the auction and stuff, but they help advise from lessons learned and experience
Yeah.
in helping you determine an initial strategy that you ever benefit for?
Yeah, and that's and we bang up against the Accenture team a lot. I'll say, hey, one, just what are the commodity trends in these categories? Or two, can you find me some suppliers? I've got two, and we kind of don't want to do business with one of them, so we're down to a sole source. So certain things that help even decide if we should run the event, and then all the other.
You've got a lot of experience from
Yeah.
beauty and stuff, so you're not coming into it.
Yeah, and the full service ones, they have kind of commodity experts and sourcing, like they'll kind of bring their knowledge to bear. And the good thing is that it'll be a collaborative discussion. But for as much market intel or strategy, advice, generally they'll give it to you. Yeah.
So you've done this before. How do you like Ariba? And the first question is, what did you use at GE and what did you use at Home Depot, and how do you like this compared to that?
Yeah, we used Ariba at Home Depot also. So, and then at GE we had I was at power systems, plastics, aircraft engines. So each business, while you think of the enterprise-wide, we had different platforms. Ariba's the most built out that I've seen. It has the most features. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
They do a lot of this, I bet.
Yep. Yeah, and Target does, and a whole bunch of others. But it depends. It depends on the model you're looking for. Like I'm contemplating now. Would we rather have a full service where we have more relationship experts as my team, and we feed all the workload through that full service vendor, or do I want technical functional experts that also can interface with the business and they work the tool and they manage the business relationship? So I'm depending upon what your sourcing strategy and what kind of team portfolio or what type of skill set you want on your team could help determine it. Yeah.
How do you manage the functional departments? So for instance, the merchants, if Best Supplier comes in at 610 and Wild Horse came in at 650, and they say, oh yeah, but we've been working with these guys that are offering at 610 and 650, and the quality, the service is so much better.
Yeah.
And their push is not to take a low bid.
Yeah.
And it might just be based upon the relationship. How do you do
Yeah,
that?
those are, it's sad when those happen, but I like when they happen because they self-correct. Depending upon the number of units, if that delta turns out to be $1,000 or $2,000, I don't care. Like we've got the right, but if it's impactful, if it's significant, the CFO generally does care, and so I don't fight that fight. I let him ask the question. Yeah.
We'll say one more question, sure.
You just said skill set of your team.
Yeah.
So in the past, I would assume it was relationship building and analytics. What are you looking for a future member of your team?
Well, Yeah, it depends. So on a traditional sourcing team, you say, okay, they have to be be able to interface with the business and with the suppliers. They have to be analytical, and then they have to be technically competent, whatever that means, whether it's data crunching or tool capability. There's a model that I see that we have a third party, and I'm not sure if it makes sense. We have a third party that is very tool competent, and they can do industry analysis. And so you say, okay, the makeup of our team may not necessarily need to be as technically competent. Maybe they're more project managers and relationship managers. So they manage multiple projects through a third-party provider, where they literally are the manager of that provider, and then they're the interface to the business, updating the project status and relaying information. Does that make sense? So we become more of the face of the capability, but not the doer. We have a team behind us. Similar to, yeah, leave it at that.
Would you please help me thank Will Scola for